I had the privilege of meeting up with Reggie and Michael on their sport touring motorcycles as we headed out on a day ride that took us about 420 miles round trip. We started this motorcycle ride off about 2.5 hours west of the fertile farmland around Abilene, Texas, continuing to make our way through the desert plains and flat oil fields, and passing through the sand hills around Monahans until we made our way into the dry, arid mountains around El Paso, Fort Davis, and the Big Bend regions. Away we go! Take off! After fueling up our motorcycles, we took off still pretty early in the morning as the sun was coming up, and heading down Interstate 20. Takes about 2.5 hours if you make any stops whatsoever before you even get into the Balmorhea area. Traveling through West Texas, as you see, is pretty darn flat along the interstate. About the only thing you're going to see out here are pump jacks kicking out the oil and making some people very rich. Passing Balmorhea State Park and the world's largest spring-fed swimming pool on your left, you are going to prepare to slow down and turn south towards Fort Davis, going through the Davis Mountain Range. The threatening clouds finally decided to drop on us, but it was a very light rain and we were pretty well prepared with our gear, so we didn't get too wet and really turned into a beautiful ride. And as you can see here, the road turns into a much more twisty road with some nice elevation changes and some beautiful scenery to look at. This is a really nice rest stop that is between Balmorhea and Fort Davis, and it's hard to miss. Makes a really good place to pull over and just rest for a few minutes, have lunch, dinner, or just relax for a moment, getting on the edge of these beautiful rocky outcroppings. It does not take very long until you reach the little town of Fort Davis, which used to be an old fort town, and this outpost served as a protection on the highway during the time of stagecoaches between San Antonio and El Paso. After having lunch at the drugstore restaurant, we headed out of town, continuing our way past the Olympia Hotel, and turn onto what is called the Wildlife Loop. Typically not a very populated road, the Wildlife Loop, once you are on it, is a road that offers the opportunity to open up the throttle a little bit. The section of road that is considered the Wildlife Loop around the north side of Fort Davis will take you on a journey around 80 miles and eventually winds back around to the McDonald Observatory and then back into Fort Davis on the east side of town. I personally like to consider there are 3 different sections to the Wildlife Loop. The first, starting on the west side of Fort Davis, kind of starts out very long, more straight, gentle, curvy sections. As you wind yourself around the north end, the road conditions are not as good. There's a lot of loose gravel, there's a lot of elevation changes, and there are some curves that come up on you right over hills that, if you're not prepared, could really get you into trouble. And this second stage comes to a conclusion at the rest stop right before you hit the McDonald Observatory. From the moment that you pull out of the rest area, you pretty much immediately hit some fantastic curves which pass by the entrance to the observatories on the top of this mountain, including the old McDonald Observatory. And I apologize for the shakiness of the camera, as my mounts were not that great, so I sped a lot of this film up. If you look in the background as we come around these next few curves, you can see one of the observatories up on the back side of the hill. And this whole stretch of road made for a fantastic motorcycle riding experience that far exceeded my expectations. It's pretty remote, so there's not a whole lot of traffic. You really could make this motorcycle trip and just enjoy it for the scenery alone, but the fact that it is somewhat remote and there was not a massive amount of traffic out in the middle of the desert gives you the opportunity to blow the carbon off the butterflies, so to speak. With that, we leave you with some beautiful scenery and a one-wheeled salute.